Hey everyone, welcome back. It all began quietly. A new relationship, a seemingly kind girl, and a connection that appeared to be blossoming naturally. But beneath the surface, the seeds of chaos were being sown, and what followed would change my family's lives forever. My brother has always been my closest friend, a kind, genuine soul. He is someone who draws people in effortlessly. Though he hadn't dated much, when he did fall for someone, he fell deeply. This time, it was Pam, a bright, beautiful girl who seemed like she had everything together. At first, we welcomed Pam into our lives. She was warm and friendly, and she took an immediate interest in me, forming what I thought was a sisterly bond. For the first year, there was no reason to believe anything was amiss. But slowly, cracks began to appear. Pam's insecurities started to manifest in subtle ways, interrupting conversations, clinging to my brother, and making possessive comments about their future together. We dismissed these quirks as her being protective of someone she cared about. But soon, her behavior became impossible to ignore. One night, my brother came home from a party with a welt on his cheek. He brushed it off, claiming he had been in a fight, something utterly out of character for him. Eventually, he confessed that Pam had accused another man at the party of assaulting her. When my brother confronted him, Pam backtracked, claiming he misunderstood her words. It was the first glaring instance of her dishonesty. Not long after, my brother decided to end the relationship. Pam didn't take it well. At first, she reached out to me, asking to spend time together, a move my family found odd. But I went along, trusting the bond we'd built. During our outing, Pam veered into deeply personal and unsettling topics, sharing traumatic stories and contradicting herself in the same breath. By the time we parted ways, I felt uneasy. That's when the phone calls began. At first, they came late at night, Pam crying and pleading for my brother to take her back. I answered out of pity, trying to console her. But one night, her tone changed. In a cold, monotone voice, she said, "Tell your brother I'm going to slit my throat tonight," and hung up. I was frozen with shock, unsure how to respond. The next day, I told my brother, who checked on her and confirmed she was fine. Still, he soon got back together with her, as if nothing had happened. Over time, Pam's erratic behavior escalated. She began spreading lies about me to my family, trying to manipulate them into thinking I was the problem. When that failed, she showed up at our house unannounced, leaving baked goods as peace offerings. We hoped she would move on, but a year later, she reappeared, disheveled and hauntingly different, waiting outside my school. That moment marked a terrifying shift. Pam's behavior spiraled into full-blown harassment. She stalked us, sent threatening messages, and even showed up at our doorstep in the middle of the night, swinging a baseball bat and screaming. The girl we had once known was gone, replaced by someone consumed by obsession and anger. Pam's unhinged appearance on our doorstep that night was burned into my memory. She looked nothing like the girl we once knew. Her hair was unevenly cut, her makeup smeared down her face, and her sunken eyes carried a vacant, almost feral look. Clutching a metal baseball bat, she yelled, laughed, and sobbed in the same breath. We watched from behind locked doors as she staggered around our front yard, her cries echoing into the night. "I hear you. Let me in," she screamed, pounding on the door. My father, armed with a cautious sense of disbelief, tried to reassure us, "She'll leave. She's just putting on a show." But the tension in the room was palpable. Eventually, Pam disappeared into the darkness, leaving us shaken but relieved that the immediate threat had passed. Yet deep down, we knew this wasn't over. In the days that followed, her presence loomed over us. Pam flooded our phones with calls and messages, apologies mixed with curses, threats, and desperate pleas. Her words became more erratic, and her tone swung between sorrow and rage. We changed our phone numbers and disconnected our landline, hoping to sever her connection to us entirely. For a while, it seemed to work. Pam vanished from our lives, and her absence was a relief. But the quiet was deceptive. About a year later, she re-emerged, not with phone calls, but with an eerie, persistent presence. I first noticed it in the form of a car, a nondescript vehicle that seemed to appear everywhere I went. Outside my school, at my workplace, and even parked near our home. At first, I dismissed it as a coincidence. But as the sightings became more frequent, unease settled in. One evening, I saw the car parked in our neighborhood, and the realization hit me like a thunderclap. That's Pam's car, I told my brother as we drove past. He shrugged, trying to downplay the situation, but the feeling of being watched grew harder to ignore. The tipping point came on the closing night of a school play I was performing in. After the show, my family and I were leaving the theater when I spotted her. Pam stood in the parking lot, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone screen. She looked up as we passed, her expression shifting from anger to a chilling, artificial smile. My brother, ever the peacemaker, stopped to confront her while the rest of us hurried to the car. "Leave us alone," he told her firmly. She followed us for a few steps, her gaze locked on him. "Goodbye," she called out, her voice saccharine and mocking. Moments later, she sped out of the lot in the same car that had been tailing us for weeks. That night, the terror reached a new peak. As we drove home, we realized Pam was following us. Her car's headlights loomed large in the rearview mirror, her brights glaring into our car. My father tried to shake her by weaving through the neighborhood, but she stayed on our tail, her car practically kissing our bumper. "Call the police," I cried, my voice trembling with panic. My mother fumbled with her phone, trying to give our location to the 911 operator. At last, after several frantic turns, Pam's car disappeared into the night. But the damage was done. She had crossed a line, and none of us felt safe in our own home. The final year of Pam's harassment was a living nightmare. Her actions became increasingly calculated and invasive, culminating in one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. One stormy night, I awoke to flashes of light in my room. Groggy and disoriented, I initially dismissed them as lightning. But the flashes didn't stop, and they didn't have the same pale hue as a storm. They were sharp, artificial, like the flash of a camera. Panic surged through me as I realized someone was taking photos through my bedroom window. I bolted from my bed, screaming as I ran down the hall. My father met me at the doorway, alarmed by my outburst. "Someone's outside," I cried. He grabbed a flashlight and rushed outside to investigate, but whoever it was had already vanished. Though no one doubted me anymore, the lack of evidence left us feeling powerless. Months later, my brother's new puppy, Ike, became the unintentional hero of this story. One evening, while my brother and his fiancée were away, Ike disappeared from our yard. Frantic, we searched the neighborhood but couldn't find him. Hours later, he reappeared on the front porch, unharmed but missing his collar. It wasn't until weeks later, when my father found Ike's collar in the yard, that we began to piece together the unsettling truth. Pam had been in our yard that night, and she had taken Ike. The realization hit like a freight train. Pam hadn't just been stalking us. She had been watching us, learning our routines, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Every unsettling moment over the past 6 years led to this terrifying conclusion. Pam's obsession had no bounds. After the incident with Ike, there was no denying the severity of Pam's obsession. She was no longer just a specter haunting the periphery of our lives. She was a direct threat, intruding on our most personal spaces. The air in our home was heavy with fear, and every noise outside made us jump. Even though Ike was safe, the thought that Pam had been in our yard sent chills down our spines. But her audacity didn't end there. One night in late March, I was home alone. My parents had gone out for dinner, and my brother was working a late shift. It was quiet, the kind of eerie stillness that makes even the smallest creak of the house feel amplified. I had locked all the doors and windows, but the memory of Pam's stalking still loomed large in my mind. As I sat in the living room, scrolling through my phone, I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. I froze, my heart racing. Slowly, I turned toward the window. There, silhouetted against the dim glow of the porch light, was Pam. She stood motionless, staring directly at me through the glass. For a moment, I was paralyzed with fear. Then, her lips curled into a crooked smile, and she raised her hand to knock. The sound echoed through the room, each knock deliberate and chilling. I grabbed my phone and dialed my father. My voice trembled as I whispered, "She's here. Pam's at the window." "Lock yourself in a room," he said, his voice urgent. "I'm calling the police." I ran upstairs, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the lock on my bedroom door. My father called back moments later to tell me the police were on their way. From the safety of my room, I heard Pam knocking again, her voice muffled but eerily calm. "You can't ignore me forever," she called. "I know you're in there. You're just like him, always hiding." The next sound I heard was the wail of approaching sirens. Pam must have heard them too, because by the time the police arrived, she was gone. They found no sign of her outside, but they took my statement and assured me they would patrol the area. When my parents returned, they were shaken but relieved I was safe. My father made a decision that night. Pam needed to be stopped. The following day, my brother and my father went to the police station to file an official restraining order. We provided every piece of evidence we had: her harassing messages, her stalking incidents, and her trespassing. The process was emotionally draining, but it was necessary. For the first time in years, it felt like we were taking back some control. The restraining order marked a turning point. Pam's behavior became less direct but no less menacing. She began posting cryptic messages on social media, vague threats that were clearly aimed at us. She also used fake accounts to try to contact my brother and me, but we ignored them. Then, in late spring, something remarkable happened. Pam disappeared, her online activity ceased, and she stopped showing up near our home or places we frequented. At first, we were skeptical, but as weeks turned into months, we dared to hope that she had finally moved on. The peace that followed was fragile, but it allowed us to begin rebuilding our lives. My brother married his fiancée, Kara, in a beautiful ceremony surrounded by family and friends. Ike was there too, wagging his tail and soaking up the love. For the first time in years, we felt safe. Still, the scars Pam left behind run deep. Even now, years later, I find myself looking over my shoulder when I'm out alone or double-checking locks before bed. My brother carries his own burden of guilt for bringing Pam into our lives, though none of us blame him. Her obsession was a storm none of us could have predicted. Looking back, I hope this story serves as a warning. The signs were there from the beginning. Small red flags that we dismissed or minimized. Obsession doesn't always announce itself loudly at first. It can start quietly, with seemingly harmless quirks, and grow into something much darker. For my family, the ordeal is over, but the lessons remain. We survived Pam's torment, but it's a chapter of our lives we'll never forget. If you enjoyed this story of resilience and redemption, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Lost Love Mystery. Your support helps us bring you more heartfelt tales like this one. Have a story of your own? Feel free to share it with us. We'd love to hear from you. Stay tuned for more stories that touch the soul and remind us of the strength in every heart.